Hi, everybody. So, just like we just heard, Food and Water Watch is a nonprofit consumer organization, and we're happy to be here today with farmers and ranchers from Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. to talk about what we all have in common and how we can work together to stop the negative impacts caused by bad trade policies that we've been living with for a long time. We just think it's really important to put into this discussion that consumers care about workers, they care about farmers and the environment, and all of those things have been damaged by trade policy that puts corporate controlled trade as its top priority above everything else. But consumers also get directly impacted if trade policy means that they're exposed to unsafe food, or they lose the ability to know what they're eating, where it comes from, and how it was produced. So the growing number of food safety scares in the last couple of years, which come from both domestic and imported food, has made it very clear that regulators are not doing enough to protect consumers. And the rising volume of imported food in all of our countries, all three countries, makes it even harder for citizens to hold anybody accountable for that, to hold any government accountable for enforcing and having good food safety standards if it's coming from a country where we can't influence those government officials, but we have to live with the consequences of what those government officials do. So despite the many years of promises about how expanded free trade is going to benefit consumers, we're not seeing those benefits. Even as the prices that livestock producers receive steadily gone down, retail food prices don't usually follow that trend. So while the producer's share of our retail food dollar continues to shrink, consumers don't consistently spend less in the meat case or the dairy aisle of the grocery store. And so one interesting development recently in all of this is that there's been a tremendous consumer interest in more local food. And that shows that consumers are looking for something different, and they think that food that comes from closer to home fits the bill. And they see a lot of advantages to it. If we really can decentralize our food system, we can keep local farmers in business, we can use less fuel and oil to ship food around, and maybe we get to know more about where our food's coming from, how it was produced. But our ability to recreate these local food systems, because they've really been diminished, is, and also to ensure that consumers everywhere in all of our countries have access to safe food, that's really being undermined by bad trade policy. And that's because our current trade policy lets big agribusiness companies pit producer against producer across national lines in a race to the bottom on price, and very few of them are going to survive that race. And it exposes reasonable regulations on food safety, on labeling, on other important protections that we've had for a long time. It exposes them to come as constant attack by corporations that find them inconvenient. So it's time, we think it's time to take a break on free trade and rework our trade policy to ensure that consumers everywhere are protected by strong food safety standards, labeling standards, and any other policies they need in their country to have the food supply that they want. And these rules have to be off limits to efforts to weaken them for the convenience of agribusiness. So we think there has to be room in our trade policy for antitrust measures so that we can restore some competition to our markets, and that we can prevent just a handful of companies from calling the shots about what our food system is going to be.